Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the BlackBrazilToday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today I want to talk about a topic that's kind of fun, kind of funny, but also kind of serious. Um, I'm going to use this topic to discuss something from the past, but and how it plays out in the present day. Might sound like a frivolous story, but it's really not, particularly, if you happen to be, black or brown in Brazil, because it speaks volumes to how people will perceive you, how companies will react to you, how stores will react to you. Something as simple as shoes, the type of shoes you have on, right? So today's video, I'm calling it "Why Were Black People Not Allowed to Wear Shoes During Brazil's Slavery Era?" Real intriguing piece. And as I said, I'm going to connect the past with the present now. Before I even get into today's story, this takes me back to my visits to Bahia. As I often said, my first trips to Brazil between 2000 and 2008, I traveled mostly to Bahia. There were three cities that I like to visit in Bahia, and I was just getting accustomed to the culture, getting accustomed to the people, the everyday, just day to day living of what they call Baianos, people from the state of Bahia. And I remember I have never been a person who really just likes to walk around wearing flip flops. Um, it seems that it is something that's caught on in the United States. I don't know for the last, I don't know how many years, because I've just never been a person to wear flip flops in a lot of places. But when I started hanging out in Bahia, I used to see that just in day to day living, going to the store or going to the beach, which is understandable going to the beach, but people would wear flip flops everywhere when I was hanging out in Bahia. And I'm just like, they would look at me like, Marcus, why don't you wear flip flops? I'm like, man, I'm not really big on wearing flip flops. They would accuse me like, hey, you're a Paulista, you're a Paulista guy, saying that I would be better fit for hanging out in a city like Sao Paulo, because in Bahia everybody wears flip flops. You know, like the biggest brand of flip flops in Brazil is this brand called Havaianas. And I just remember, when my first years in Brazil, everybody was wearing these. They call them chinelos. We call them flip flops. They call them chinelos. And back in the day, you could get these chinelos for like, I don't know, 5 reais or something. If you go to an airport like in Sao Paulo now, it's like, man, I mean, when I was living in Sao Paulo, I was just blown away at the price of how much the prices of these Havaiana chinelos have blown up. It was you can get from what I saw Chanelos that were costing 40, 50, 60 reais, 75 reais, depending on what store you were in, what neighborhood you were in. And I'm just like, wow, for a pair of Chanelos. When I would hang out on the beach, I would have my own type of like the Adidas brand I would wear. I was never, I know this sounds ridiculous maybe, but I've never liked wearing those flip flops would have the little string between your big toe and your second toe. I just never liked the feeling of that. I didn't like the feeling of this Chanel, this flip flop always feeling like it's going to fall off of my foot. So I was just never a person that liked flip flops. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just me. But as I said, you hang out in certain areas of Bahia. I don't know now. I haven't been to Bahia in years, but you go to Bahia and everybody's wearing flip flops. You know, to each his own. I'm just not the one. When I was living in Sao Paulo, I saw that wearing flip flops had really caught on in Sao Paulo as well. Even though you're going to find a lot more people just wearing shoes in Sao Paulo. So they say, "Oh, look at this Paulista guy. You don't like wearing flip flops." Like, no, actually, I don't. Nothing against you. You can wear them. Rock what you want. I'm just not. I've never been one to wear flip flops. So, what is the connection between wearing flip flops and perhaps an era in Brazil's slavery era that lasted over 350 years? Is there a connection there? Let's check this out. Let's get directly into this article for today. Why were Black people not allowed to wear shoes during Brazil's slavery era? Let's get into it. So if you look for any photos on Google or whatever, DuckDuckGo, I like DuckDuckGo, you punch up images of slavery in Brazil, and these are the type of pictures you're going to find. And it's something that I noticed years ago, and I'm like, okay, there must be slaves. That's why they don't have on shoes. Okay, but then there's more to it. So this this topic I'm covering from a an Instagram page called Boneca Preta. I like this channel because this page because they use dials to tell stories about Brazil, whether it might be of the current culture or something that was, from the past, history. And I just like how they set up their page. They use dials to tell all of these stories, right? This is one that's really a good one. I want to cover this one in a couple of days. Why do Black people only speak of racism? There's a really good article there. This one here, it says, "Oh, look at these guys playing the victim. I'm a white person and I'm also poor." And what is he saying here? Because in Brazil, because you have a lot of poor white people along with poor Black and brown people, a lot of white people will say, "Well, you guys are just whining. You're always playing the victim role. I'm white and I'm poor. I don't have those problems." And as you can see in the background, you see the Black guy or the Black Dow being harassed by the police in the background, right? So they have some just incredible posts. I've used a couple already. I'm definitely going to be using some more stuff from this Instagram page because they got some really good information here. Now, the story that I'm going to talk about today in terms of shoes is something that is funny because I look back on the blog, on the Black Brazil Today blog, and I'm like, it trips me out when I realized that a lot of stuff that people talk about now, stories or posts that I've done, in years go by. And just referring to today's story, I saw that there's like two different pieces here that I've touched on this topic sometime in the past, just since I've been blogging at blackbraziltoday.com. Anyway, why couldn't Black people wear shoes? In ancient Brazil, it was considered disrespectful for enslaved Blacks to have shoes on their feet in front of people considered to be superior. There was never a written law. In fact, shoes were forbidden to captives who, no matter how dressed they were always barefoot. Some of these very famous paintings you'll see from Brazil, you see this guy here, he's obviously serving. Now, there's something else to be said about the people here who are wearing shoes, because in some cases you have obviously Blacks who have earned their freedom. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, as we go on in this article. Why is it that some Blacks during the slavery era were wearing shoes and others were not? Or, post slavery, in the abolition era, or during slavery? What is the difference? Let's continue this with this article. Shoes were like a marker of civility, since according to the absurd beliefs of the time, only animals didn't wear shoes. So much so that in the arts, almost no painting depicts enslaved Blacks wearing shoes. This is a very famous picture. You can pull this up if you just type in Militão Augusto G. Azevedo with his Negro and mulatto slaves. This is a picture of the Brazilian slave era back in the 19th century with a white slave master and his Black and mulatto slaves. Notice they all are missing shoes, right? They're not wearing shoes. A slave could, thanks to his resources, be well dressed, but he was obligated to be barefoot as a testament to his servile condition. Hence, the strategy of some runaway slaves who wore shoes to pass themselves off as free and deceive their pursuers, people who were obviously trying to track them down and bring them back into slavery. They would put on shoes just to make somebody believe, okay, he's free. Okay, so we can't take him back into captivity. Here's another very famous depiction of slavery in Brazil. After the abolition of slavery in Brazil, witnesses say that many people rushed to the stores to buy shoes, as their feet were used to not wearing shoes. Many got blisters and corns on their feet. Even so, many freedmen were seen carrying shoes tied by the laces as if they were trophies of freedom. Bringing the discussion to the present day, today's flip-flops in some cases are the equivalent of the bare feet of yesteryear. Today, wearing flip-flops is seen as something poor, untidy, or lacking in resources on the part of the person wearing them. Who hasn't ever heard the question, are you going out wearing those flip-flops? For many people, wearing flip-flops in certain places is still synonymous with poverty and sloppiness. Many people avoid wearing very simple clothes in some places so as not to be mistaken for a thief or avoid embarrassing situations. Last week, okay, so this is as I was saying, let me see if I can find the particular article. Okay, this article that I did back in 2019, what is it? Young Blacks vent on the issue of the clothes they're wearing because it's not just a matter of vanity. It was a post on Twitter by the student Larissa Teixeira, and she talked about just in her post when she realized she was going somewhere and she was wearing, like flip flops, and she freaked out, like, oh my God. And when I read the tweet on the Instagram profile that I was reading, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that post because it's from 2019. I already used it on the Black Brazil Today website. So in her post from 2019, student Larissa Teixeira's post went viral on Twitter when she told of the concerns Black people have when choosing the clothes that they're going to wear. Quote, she says, last week I caught a flight in flip flops. Not that I forget that on other days, but at the airport, I was reminded in a bizarre way that I'm Black and that I know so many people who are, that even in Rio, I don't wear flip flops on a daily basis. So this is what this young woman said when she realized she was about to catch a flight wearing some flip flops. It's just like a social no. Plus, you're Black. You're asking for trouble. You're asking for people to ask, you, what are you doing in this store? Can you afford the products that we have here, or being followed around by a security guard? All because of the way that you're dressed, but again, in combination with the skin color. Okay. A strong symbol, shoes have also become a symbol of freedom and for some people an object of ostentation. Whether for some historical or social reason, the ostentatious use of high priced branded shoes is ironic to say the least compared to what happened in the past. Another thing that my first trips to Brazil are going to be just very memorable to me. I remember I was hanging out in this town called Ilhéus in Bahia, and I just remember going to the small downtown in Ilhéus and walking up to a window in the downtown where they had all types of, dress shoes and gym shoes. And I looked from a distance, it's like, oh, these shoes are pretty cheap. You walk up and you're like, okay, 50 reais for this, these Nikes or whatever, 60 reais. But as I got closer to the window, I would see, no, it's 50 or 60 reais times 5 or times 10. The point being, at that time, like the minimum salary per month in Brazil was like 200 reais or something. So as most of the shoes were imported, thus they are being sold according to the value in the dollar. So that would make these shoes, if you make them like 50 reais times 10, that would be 500 reais. And as the minimum salary per month the average person was earning was about 200, 250 reais per month. What it was that they would put the 50 in big numbers so that you could see it from a distance. But as you get closer, you'll see it says 50 times 10, because a lot of people simply could not afford to buy a pair of Nikes for 500 reais. So they would have like an installment plan. We used to call it putting on layaway, but that I'll never forget that. It's like, hey, you putting shoes on layaway. Obviously it's a different, economic situation. uh just for what the minimum salary is, just a lot of people couldn't afford to buy, a name brand like Nike back in the day. Let me see, what else do we have here? So here is an article from a medium.com blogger, this Brazilian, Malo Chiaro. What is it? Malo Chiaro. And the name of his article is Black People Couldn't Wear Shoes. This is the original post. Preto não podia usar sapato. Okay. So I'm using his article because it fits perfectly into what I'm talking about today. Cases and more cases involving shoes haunted my life, and the family trauma assaulted my taste for wearing flip-flops. Quote, somebody in the family would say, you're going out wearing flip-flops like that and you'll look like a slob. Put some shoes on. And the most common phrase, you're already Black and then you're wearing flip-flops, they'll send you in through the service door. Now, for people who don't remember this, I've talked about this too. Another piece of what people consider to be racism in Brazilian society is that you go into a middle class apartment building and you're going to have two elevators. One elevator is called the service elevator and the other one's called the social elevator. The service elevator is supposed to be used for the people who work there, the cleaning women, cooks and the maids who are coming into the building to serve the people they're working for, versus the social elevator for people who are coming in to visit the residents. The history of the social versus the service elevator is another big debate about how racism functions in Brazilian society. Let me see, where are we? Many years have passed since my last desire for shoes, and in the meantime, I've discovered something. At the time of slavery here in our beloved Brazil, free people were distinguished from enslaved people by their feet, since slaves were forbidden to wear shoes. Is that so? That's right. In Brazil's colonial slave society, clothes served as a mark of social distinction. So when they were freed, the freed blacks tried to buy shoes to differentiate themselves from the slaves who were forbidden to wear them. Enslaved black people weren't allowed to ride horses either. Yet another cruel detail about real life history. But anyway, when I discovered that black people weren't allowed to wear shoes when they were enslaved, a new eye opened in my mind, full of new questions, and with one even more pulsating than the others. Why do big companies brand shoes as an object of desire, a symbol of social ascension, and amazingly, rebellion? Now, this picture is from another article that I put up. It's called, I think it was called the the black people, the destiny of black people after abolition. Okay, so this is an article that's talking about, post-slavery, the post-slavery era after abolition, and that's what this picture is taken from. So it's the same picture that I'm using here, and the text, the caption on the bottom of the picture says, "The black man and the member of the elite." The first one, barefoot, takes off his hat in respect. The second seems oblivious to who is next to him, who is next to him. The caption of the photo in Fonfon number 6, May 18th, 1907, is Prince Dom Luis of Orleans and Braganza, 1878 to 1921, with the bather Santana, who taught him to swim at Flamingo Beach. Abolition kept freedmen in a subordinate position in society. Okay. So you got the elite white guy right here, and the guy, if this is 1907, obviously he's no longer enslaved, but the social condition, social hierarchy is still in place. So black man, no shoes, in respect of a person who was of a higher social standard than himself. Okay. So a lot can be said about the idea of why black people couldn't wear shoes. It has a historical precedence in Brazil. Um, an article that I did back in 2019 about these two twin black girls from the northeastern state of Maranhão. It's considered one of the blackest states in Brazil. Yasi and Yarasa, the twin descendants of fugitive slave communities. Absolutely stunning girls. They made the cover of the Brazil edition of Marie Claire magazine. But there was something that caught my eye in this article when I put this up a few years ago. Let's see. It says we studied in public schools and colleges, or probably like high schools. They call colegios, can be a grade school or a high school in Brazil. We had a poor childhood. We tried in every way to help at home, saving money, working from early on. Our maternal grandparents raised their children in a precarious situation. My mother says that sometimes they had nothing to eat, just rice and flour. Even so, our grandfather worked hard all year to be able to buy shoes for his children. In the end, to see all the little black kids with shoes, as he said. That's because in the Época da Escravidão, time of slavery, what set the negro livre, the free black, apart from the negro escravo, black slave, was if he had shoes on or not. And that was very strong for her. So much so that in our childhood, we saw mom buying a lot of shoes. We had a lot of them. She worried about that and said, "As minhas pretinhas, my little black girls have shoes. They're not barefoot blacks," says Yancy. Okay. So here, this article from 2019, and they're still talking about the slave era where wearing shoes separated the slave from the enslaved, or, the free black person versus the enslaved black person. 2019, there's in Maranhão, these twin models, their parents are still talking about this. Our black kids have to have shoes because of what it says to society. Okay. This article, another one, this is the one that I was originally talking about from 2019. And these black people, these young black people are just talking about how they have to be careful with what they're wearing. It's not just a matter of vanity, because where they go, they're going to be judged by how they dress. A political scientist, Naila Neves, had a panic attack when she needed to wear flip-flops. It's not vanity. It just says that you're already black and you're going to be judged by society by what you wear, as your skin color and your features are already going to be judged. After being mistaken for a thief, Lucas Kuan changed the way he dressed. Looks like a thief. So this is not paranoia. This is just the way things work in a former slave society where black people are judged not only by what they look like, but also by what they're wearing. There was another particular, let me see. Blacks, this is an article from 2016. Again, Black Brazil Today, the blog. Blacks don't wear name brand shoes and clothes. Man physically assaulted because of his clothing. Black woman blocked from entering a shopping mall. So just the title of this article says it all. blacks don't wear name brand shoes and clothing. So this is what I've argued this for years. Brazilian society still sees black or African Brazilians, Afro Brazilians, as slaves or descendants of slaves, and Brazil continues to treat black people in this manner. So I just wanted to bring this article to the fore and share this with my followers and my subscribers because, you know, underneath this idea that everything is cool in Brazil, there's no race problem, black people are treated as you're just like other people. It's like, it's not true. When you find these little nuances and you pull back the curtain, you see that this hierarchy is still in place in Brazil. And it goes, one other thing I want to mention before I go. If you've ever seen the film Cidade de Deus, this is something that I noticed. Look at Cidade de Deus and you'll see just how many people are wearing chinelos or flip-flops in the film. There's a famous picture of that film, and just look at how many people wearing, flip-flops in that particular picture. And then when I noticed, when a bunch of people, you go into a favela and you just take a picture of a bunch of black and brown teens, and you'll notice most of them are wearing chinelos, Havaianas, usually just flip-flops. And then whenever I notice pictures of people who have been arrested, they've been taken to the civil police department, and you take a picture of all of the people that's been arrested, and most of them, if not all of them, will be wearing flip-flops. This is something that you notice when you walk around in certain cities in Brazil. It's just very common that people wear flip-flops. I'm just not a person who's into flip-flops. I never really like wearing them unless I'm specifically on the beach. But what does the type of shoes you have on your feet say about your position in society or your perceived position in society? Today, like the article was pointing out, the flip-flops of today can hark back to black people wearing, or not being allowed to wear, shoes during the era of enslavement. Really intriguing. This is Brazilian society that we're talking about here. So anyway, what did you think about today's video? Drop a comment in the comment section. Want to hear what you have to say. Consider subscribing to this channel if you've seen more than a few videos that you like. Like this video, share this video. Definitely click on the notification bell so that you'll be alerted when I put up a new video. If you like this video, consider, sending me a super thanks. Always helpful. Or if you prefer, I have a Cash App at Mr. Marquez72. That's MrMarquez72. I'll accept any donation. You feel free to tip me in proportion to what you think this article is worth or this video. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and invite you all to come back and check out the next video that I post.